welcome to our show. Thank you for your service. Today I'm here with Jesus Pereira. He is the Holyoke VSO. He is a veteran from the Mass National Guard and founder of Vet Air. Jesus, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good. So you have a lot of connections to the veteran population, but let's start with your service.
Sure. So I spent most of my time in the Massachusetts National Guard. 3 days after graduating high school, I was in basic training, and most of that was due to the fact that I was a young father. And with tough, loving moms, they say you better get up and do something with yourself. So that was the path that I took. I initially started off as a petroleum supply specialist with the Massachusetts National Guard right here in actually Westover, when we used to have Hueys, Cobras, and light Loaches here. And we were there for quite some time, and then we moved over to Westfield, where I ended up getting a full-time job with the Guard on what they call a tech status as a ground support equipment repairer, and then moved on later on in my career as a logistics specialist with them.
So how many years did you serve? What is the path of the career, the timeline?
In total, it was roughly slightly over 21 years. 10 years of it was tech time, and then about 5 years of on and off active duty, between a deployment and different orders.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't realize this, but the Army flies.
The Army does have an aviation program. It's predominantly helicopters. In Massachusetts, we do have a fixed wing counterpart, but mostly UH-60s, UH-72s now are the primary aircraft in Massachusetts.
And those that you mentioned are helicopters?
They are whirlybirds, yes. they're based right here. I mean, there's some right in Westfield and some in Cape Cod.
Okay. Did you ever have an opportunity? Were you flying the planes, or were you?
No, so I did everything I could to get on a helicopter anytime that they were doing something that didn't require actual crew members, where I can fill in. So anytime they had water bucket training, where they would put a big bucket underneath the aircraft and go pick up water and dump it on fires, I was able to become a member for that. Or when they needed a passenger or just ballast in the back, little fat kid, right, to sit in the back, I would go ahead and do that. So I did take any opportunity I can to sit in an aircraft, read startup checklist, spend a lot of time with the aviators. And I think throughout my career, they really were the ones that got me over a fear that I had of flying, of heights, and really encouraged me to move forward with pursuing an aviation license of some sort, which I did.
So you knew you had a fear of heights and a fear of flying, and yet you still tried everything you could to get in the aircraft.
Well, I think one thing is that I was always really inquisitive when it came to technology and buttons. So, even in here, I was running around going, oh my God. So, looking at these aircraft, they're fairly sophisticated. There's so much information and they have a lot of capability. And I always wanted to know how it happened. How did it work? Why does this do that? And how come you have 6 different radios? And I was always just asking tons of questions.
So you're a curious little kid sitting in the back, you're learning everything you can, and you progress. You said you had several different jobs.
Yeah.
Were they all focused around the aircrafts, or?
Yeah, so my initial full-time job, what got me into working for the federal government, for the Guard, was a ground support equipment repair. So basically the job of that person was to fix equipment and maintain equipment that they used on aircraft. So we had this one piece of equipment that had a turbine engine in it. So I got to see what a turbine engine was, how it worked, how to take it apart, how to put it together, how they used that to start aircraft, how to run electrical power off of it, and hydraulic systems off of it. It was just, to me, very exciting. I'm a very hands-on kind of guy, and it got me really into wanting to know what else the aircraft did because of the equipment that I worked on.
It's interesting to watch you talk about this stuff, because as we talk more, you just get so much more exciting. It's so joyful to see.
I think that, I found a lot of joy in aviation. It's not very common that folks are involved in aviation, and I understand that I've been exposed to something that not a lot of people have been. Never mind a young kid from Holyoke, who grew up in the flats and in the Highlands, and went through the Holyoke school system. You don't get a lot of folks with that history having exposure to aviation.
That's very true. Now, you said you went in as a young father.
Yes.
How was that on your family, you joining the Guard? What kind of sacrifices do you feel were put there?
Well, I think my son's mother really took the brunt of being away. I was the one that had to go away for basic and AIT. I was the one that had to go away for different trainings throughout your military career because you have to if you're looking to progress. But luckily that support system was there. Not only she was there for him, but his grandmother on the mom's side, and then my family on our side. It really took all of us to make sure that he was always in a position to do better and not struggle too much, and have a support system for him while we were doing what we had to do for work.
That's a tough thing to balance, that family life, especially in the dynamic of not a solitary unit, but working 2 units working together, and then you throw the military on top of that, and you turned it into a career.
I did. I got really excited about aviation. I immersed myself in it, and it does come with its challenges. I think we had an unorthodox family upbringing for my son because of it. Our normal wasn't work 9 to 5, come home. Work 9 to 5, come home. It was, okay, I'll be back in 2 months. I'll be back in 3 months, or during deployment, I'll be back in 12 months. And to some, that might be just unreasonable, but we sort of conform to it. We realize this is just how it is, and this is the career path that I pursued and enjoyed. So.
And very commendable for doing so.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
making sure that you supported your family, serving your country, serving the Commonwealth and the National Guard. So my next question goes to, you deployed later in your career.
Yeah, so the job that I held in the military throughout the time that I was doing the other jobs was technically a petroleum supply specialist. And at the turn of 2002, when the deployment started happening in Massachusetts, they mobilized us, sent us out to New Jersey, and what we found out was that most of the bases overseas had contracted fuel. So the United States Army went out, and all the other branches went out and contracted different contractors to provide petroleum services on different airfields. So I ended up getting activated and then coming home after 6 months, not going anywhere. And the subsequent deployments, I think our battalion had gone out on 5 or 6 different deployments throughout maybe a 10-year span. Same thing, when we go to war, they make a list of things we need, and that particular job was just something that they didn't need because they had it contracted out somewhere else. Until 2010, we went out with the 3rd of the 126 out to Kuwait, was our deployment, part of an aviation task force that provided transportation, basically a somewhat glorified cab company for dignitaries. But we had guns on our aircraft, so.
Well, that's fancy.
Well, it is for some people.
So in Kuwait, how long were you there?
It was about 10 months, I think, boots on ground. Nothing too exciting.
No?
Not much to report except, that Groundhog Day effect. Understanding what heat really is. Understanding what sand really is. Just a different way of living, I vividly remember just, where we lived was barricaded with Jersey barriers or T barriers, and in the middle of the complex is your showers and your toilets, and so you would go out, you take a shower, and as soon as you came back, you're already sweating, you're just drenched in sweat. So I remember that. I remember biting into my first sandwich and just tasting the sand in it, and those are the strangest things that you remember from your deployments.
Yeah, the military, they train us, they equip us.
Sure.
We're with comrades who've at the same level, but it's those little quality of life things that I think are surprising. I feel like we're not prepared for that stuff. They tell you it's going to be hot, they tell you it's going to be sandy, but just how much that affects your day-to-day actions.
The one thing that I was really surprised to see was the fact that they gave us cold weather gear.
What?
during deployment. And until, say, November, December, I didn't use it. But then you realize that during the day when it's 90 degrees and then it's 40 at night, you're cold.
Well, that's a heck of a
There's a 50-degree spread, right.
Yeah.
And you come out with this parka on. It's just, it's amazing in the desert you're wearing cold weather gear, but it happens.
I felt the same thing in Afghanistan. I arrived in February, and it would snow every day. And we had trained for Afghanistan in Fort Drum, New York in January.
Oh.
And so we went to the blizzard to train for the desert, but we got to the desert and it would snow.
Yeah.
And it was very conflicting just in what we had mentally prepared for.
Yeah.
So I think it's unique being able to have that experience to travel and see how other parts of the world have their seasons and manage their day to day with their elements.
Yeah, definitely very interesting to see the different weather patterns, and yeah, I mean, I guess at times it makes you appreciate some of the weather patterns we have, I guess.
I do love the New England seasons.
Well, I'm getting to that point where the cold is really starting to get to me.
So 24 years in the military, what happened next?
Well, that was an interesting thing. I was coming up, we have retention boards in the Army after 20 years. And I knew that I wasn't going to get retained, or I knew that I was on that chopping block. At the time, I was a sergeant first class. I didn't do much more for career progression. And I started falling out of love with the military at that time. It was just a long stint. And I left my federal job. I left the Guard and kind of just waited out. And just prior to that, I had started this nonprofit, Pereira. And just, it was this domino effect of things. Holyoke, United Veterans of Holyoke nominated me for Veteran of the Year for the city.
What an honor.
It really was, because I had no idea who they were. And through that, I met a gentleman by the name of Paul Seifert, who mentioned to me that he was a veteran service officer and was moving on to a different job, and that I should apply for that position, and which I did. And it was in Long Meadow, and I did that for slightly over a year. And then.
And what job was that?
So the director of veteran services for the town of Long Meadow.
Okay.
And then the position in Holyoke came up, place I grew up in. Now, mind you, prior to leaving the Guard, I had no idea what a veteran service officer was, what they did, that I even had one in my own community. So I was surprised that even existed. And after finding out the culture of some of the offices, I was really inspired to kind of do something about that, to change the face of veteran service officers, the responsibilities that we have, and how much more we can help the community if we just sort of engage. So that was kind of like what happened after.
And so now you're serving Holyoke as a veteran service officer.
Yes.
And you founded a program called Vet Air. What is that?
So the one thing I remember coming back from deployment was I got involved in the VA healthcare system. I'm like, hey, messed up my back during deployment, and I kind of don't sleep so well just because I think I have sleep apnea, all sorts of things. And like, yeah, sure, we need you to go to West Haven, Connecticut. So, well, there's a VA right up the street, in Northampton, right? Well, why don't I just go there? And then my follow-up was all the way up in White River Junction in Vermont. And it's like, well, this is ridiculous. And then I started thinking about how veterans behave. And one, we don't like to ask for help. As soon as you throw unreasonable barriers in my way, I'm just not going to deal with it anymore. I'm going to suck it up and drive on. That famous phrase that we're taught. And I knew that if transportation was a barrier for people to get their medical care, that they wouldn't do it. They just simply wouldn't do it. Especially those that are dealing with mental health problems, or are now dealing with diseases that are now causing mental health problems. The last thing you want is for them to have to worry about how to get to their medical appointment. So throughout, after 2002, I ended up getting my pilot's license in the civilian world, and figured that I can offer rides to veterans who were going to White River Junction, because Lebanon, New Hampshire has an airport right there. And we had an agreement with the DAV who would just come out and pick up veterans from the airport.
So your rides are flights?
Most of them are flights in small general aviation aircraft. They're not jets or anything, but it's a lot faster than driving.
I'm sure.
And it's somewhat of an experience for those who've ever experienced flight or have had any aviation background, or even just spent time with, a battle buddy doing it. It really opens up conversation. You get a perspective of the world that you typically never get. And, you know, half the time I put them up front with me and they're apprehensive at first, but you give them the control for however long they feel comfortable with, and it changes the dynamics quite a bit, because most of it is a control thing where people don't feel like, I'm not in control of this aircraft, and they're kind of rigid and don't want to do much of anything. And then you say, hey, take the controls, and they go, I don't want to. And I go, well, you know, I'm looking over here, you better grab it. And they do. And it creates that bond that we've learned to create with our fellow brothers and sisters throughout the years. Now I trust you to take care of me because I gave you control of the aircraft, you know, and it changes the dynamics quite a bit.
That is outstanding that you, one, provide that sort of transportation. You know, having a husband who has his own symptomatic issues from the military, traffic is not one of our favorite things.
Yeah.
So I completely agree that that barrier would certainly persuade people to just ignore their symptoms or their health conditions and not advocate for themselves. But beyond that, you give them an experience and camaraderie. And did you think that's what this would turn into when you started it?
No, I definitely didn't think that deep into it. I just simply thought I could just pick somebody up from the airport or a airport and take them to where they need to go. But as you start flying more and more of these, well, we call them missions, flights, you start realizing that there's more impact besides just a ride. You know, last year we were at the air show in Westover, and this young lady came up to us and said, "Thank you so much. You took my papa, you know, to his cancer treatment. He passed away last year, but he talked about that flight for months after and after." And she was just so thankful and appreciative for all, you know, just for and for me, it wasn't a big thing. Like, I picked the guy up at Westover in my small plane. We didn't go that far. We went down to West Haven. But that experience, he was prior in aviation in the Marine Corps. That to him was best thing since sliced bread.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you travel from Western Mass outward.
Well, the word has spread, so we travel from all sorts of weird places. I have roughly 12 volunteer pilots now.
Okay.
And so when requests come in, we just simply email the pilots who's available to do this. And they've ranged from someone going from here to New Jersey, Bath, New York, to flights, you know, going to Jamaica. Now, in the case of Jamaica, it wasn't something that we were capable of. No one had an aircraft that can travel that far. I'm not that wealthy. So we were able to take funds and buy an airline ticket for the individual to get out there.
Wow.
The VA has called us to send people out to treatment down in San Antonio, Texas. And you know, that's rewarding because the VA has a phenomenal, well, their funding is a lot better than what I get, and they have resources that I don't have. The one thing they lack is transportation out of state. So when they call me and say, I have a guy ready to go to this intense treatment, leave Sunday, and it's Friday, you know, at 4 o'clock, of course.
Oh, those 4 o'clock Friday calls.
It happens all the time. It's something to be able to execute that. You know, you get to sort of a sense of accomplishment when you can go, all right, I got you, I'm tracking, give me a minute. You know, all right, ticket's set, you need to go here, pick this up, that, you know, and take care of it. And there's an individual who had a life experience in the military, who came home, who had challenges, and it wasn't readjusting well, who's now going to go to treatment for the next 3 months to get right, and hopefully get right. And we had a hand in that. So you can't beat that.
I can't even imagine how rewarding that is and how much that must energize you to continue this mission and grow your program so that you can continue nationally to support people.
I think that with the right partners and with the support of the general public, we could make this a national program. It's just too easy. I mean, we could take airline miles, we can take money, you know. We could take more pilots with big planes that can go really far. I think we focused a lot on veterans who've come back that have lost limbs. And that's a noble cause, but there's a lot more who didn't, who are suffering other types of wounds that we can help out.
Well, that is fantastic, and it's amazing to know that such a great program is available local here. People in Chicopee, if they needed it, they could call you. You're right in Holyoke.
Yeah, you can call me. My cell phone number is probably the best known cell phone number out there. It's 413-250-0765. I probably won't pick up because I get tons of phone calls. I got to screen them all. But I'm accessible. I'm that guy that you tag on Facebook and I'm responding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you need help, it's kind of what I do.
Well, Jesus, thank you for everything you've done in the service and for our community, and thank you for watching.